After a 3-year wait, the next Wonder Woman installment is here. Wonder Woman 1984 serves as yet another thrilling installment in Diana's modern-day story. That said, it still left some unanswered questions in its wake. Here are the biggest unanswered questions in Wonder Woman 1984. Wonder Woman 1984 opens on the secret Amazonian island of Themyscira during Diana's childhood. In an incredibly arduous sort of Amazon-style Olympic Games, Diana, despite being years younger than her competitors, easily takes first place before falling behind when the race is nearly finished. Though she finds a shortcut and regains first place, her aunt, the warrior Antiope, pulls her out of the running, telling her that she cheated and can't win if she doesn't do it honestly. However, the existence of these games in general raises some questions, none of which get answered. What are these games called and how often are they held? Why is Diana, a literal child, even allowed to compete against adult Amazonian warriors? Also, how are the competitors chosen? Are they from noble families like Diana, or are they chosen from a larger group? And what do they win when they take first place in these games? Shortly after she gets started at the Smithsonian, Barbara shows off some of her discoveries to Diana, including a mysterious stone with an ancient language written along its base. Ultimately, the two discover that the Dreamstone can grant wishes, but the Dreamstone's exact origin is never specifically revealed. Diana and Barbara do discover that the stone was crafted by the god of mischief and treachery and will grant any wish, though in doing so it steals a person's most cherished ability, which can only be reversed if the person takes their wish back or if the stone itself is destroyed. However, we never learned where the stone came from, and much of its backstory remains a mystery. As the film introduces us to Diana's lonely life in DC, the camera pans across the shelves of her apartment, which contain photos from throughout her life, as well as Steve's watch, which he gave her right before he sacrificed his life in the war. These photos, which chronicle several adventures in Diana's life, include one that raises some questions. Diana posing in front of a pastoral area with a sign that reads Trevor Ranch. While this is clearly a sweet gesture, it also raises some big questions, the most obvious of which is, what and where exactly is Trevor Ranch? Did the ranch already exist within Steve's family, and did Diana visit and meet them? Or did Diana start it as a tribute to her fallen love? What does Trevor Ranch do exactly? Aside from the fact that it bears Steve's name, we still know nothing about Trevor Ranch. After Barbara and Diana make their initial wishes on the stone, Maxwell uses an unwitting, newly confident Barbara to gain access to the artifact and does something completely unprecedented. He becomes the stone itself by wishing to be the human embodiment of the Dreamstone. In doing so, he wrecks his body, but also earns unprecedented power, using his ability to grant wishes to manipulate people throughout the world into doing his bidding. Eventually, Diana, with her powers restored, uses the lasso of truth to speak through Maxwell as he broadcasts his own image across the world and begs people to recant their own wishes. However, this doesn't really answer the question of what happens to the stone when Maxwell recants. Does this destroy the Dreamstone altogether, or does it still live within him, ready to grant wishes once again? Throughout his time as the human embodiment of the Dreamstone, Maxwell accomplishes a lot. Maxwell becomes uncorrupted when he recants after he's subdued by Diana, reuniting with his son and promising to be a better father. However, the fact still remains that Maxwell did some pretty abominable things during his tenure as the Dreamstone, and despite being returned to reality, it seems like Maxwell should probably be held accountable for everything he did. Does Maxwell ever face any legal consequences for everything he does as the Dreamstone? If so, perhaps it's possible that he'd be cleared of all charges, deemed unable to control himself while his body was more or less possessed by a mythical force. As Maxwell manipulates unsuspecting people into making rash wishes that end up serving his bottom line, we see people across the world making a ton of crazy requests. Under Maxwell's Dreamstone rule, the world ends up on the brink of nuclear war, becoming a crazed, apocalyptic place that looks absolutely terrifying. By the time the film ends, it's the holiday season, and we see Diana as she happily watches families play together at a local Christmas village in DC. However, the fact remains that everybody celebrating Christmas this year seems, well, suspiciously happy after the cataclysmic events of the entire film. This raises the question, do humans remember any of their wish-induced lives, or was it wiped from their memory, allowing them to move on? After Steve Trevor sacrificed himself in the first Wonder Woman film, viewers spent 3 years wondering if he'd return. Thanks to the Dreamstone, Steve does return in the sequel, and though his and Diana's romance is short-lived once again, they still get some time together in the 1980s before Diana makes her own grand sacrifice. Wonder Woman 3 was recently confirmed with Jenkins at the helm, but she previously said she'd only return if the film would get a fully theatrical release. As far as Gadot is concerned, she wouldn't even want to do the film if Pine doesn't make another miraculous comeback. Gadot told Entertainment Tonight, "I couldn't imagine doing another one without him. The fact that they figured out the right way to bring him back that actually helps the story, it was delightful to work with him again and it felt like coming back home, working with Patty and with Chris and with our wonderful crew. There's no word on if Pine would be willing to return, but the question of whether Steve can come back from the dead a second time still remains.
I wish we had more time.
When Barbara first arrives at the Smithsonian, she's meek and shy, flying under the radar thanks to a spectacular lack of confidence. Though Diana initially turns down Barbara's first lunch invitation, the two begin to bond over ancient artifacts, leading Diana to invite Barbara out for drinks after work. Over wine and cocktails, Diana opens up to Barbara, saying she admires her new friend's open nature and even admits that she has largely closed herself off emotionally, which is more than Diana typically gives to anyone in her life. After Maxwell and the rest of the world recant their wishes, Barbara transforms back into a human being, and we never see her again. It does seem like Diana and Barbara have a genuine connection, especially after they've both been affected by the Dreamstone. Do they ever rekindle their friendship?
Have you ever been in love?
A long, long time ago. You?
So many times, yeah, all the time.
The Dreamstone is definitely too good to be true, which is a fact that Maxwell and Barbara both learn pretty quickly, as Barbara gives up all of her humanity and Maxwell's body literally crumbles under the pressure of being the stone itself. There's no question that the Dreamstone can be used for evil, which leads one to wonder if it could also be used for a significantly less selfish reason. Both Barbara and Maxwell use the Dreamstone to gain power and strength, but the way Diana uses it raises some interesting questions. Though Diana is already plenty powerful as an Amazonian and doesn't need the Dreamstone to wish for that, her wish to bring Steve back is extraordinarily personal and doesn't seem as if it could cause any adverse effects. Except for the stranger's body that Steve seems to hijack. Considering how even Diana's wish isn't immune to corruption, is it even possible to use the Dreamstone for good and not evil? If you watch Wonder Woman 1984 closely, you might notice that the actress playing Asteria, an ancient legendary Amazon warrior whose gold armor helps Diana defeat Maxwell and Barbara, looks pretty familiar. In fact, that actress is none other than Lynda Carter, who made the character of Wonder Woman famous during the television series in the 1970s. As if that wasn't enough, Carter pops up in a mid-credits sequence, which reveals a stunning fact. Asteria, like Diana, secretly lives among humans. Naturally, this raises an enormous question. Will Carter ever appear aside Gadot, who took over the mantle of Wonder Woman for the big screen in a possible sequel? It's entirely possible that both Carter's cameo and credits sequence are simply Easter eggs for longtime Wonder Woman fans, but it also brings up the exciting possibility that Carter and Gadot could join forces as Asteria and Diana in future Wonder Woman projects. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite superhero movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.